The Magicians podcast is brought to you in proud association with the Magic Circle, Alakazam Magic and Gigio.
I've been a full-time magician now for 12 years, and one of the things that's tough when this becomes your business instead of your hobby is to keep it fresh and to keep learning magic. And I've recently discovered a new way of doing that, something which I've been enjoying and that I really think you podcast listeners will enjoy too. It's the Alakazam Online Magic Academy, and I spoke to my great friend Peter Nardi there, and I asked him if he would be kind enough to offer some sort of incentive for you guys to go and have a look at it and give it a try. I really believe you will love being a part of this. It's a different way of learning magic and it's great fun. He sent the following message, which I'm going to read to you, and I think you're going to love it. The Alakazam Online Magic Academy are proud to offer Magician Podcast listeners a special 20% discount on our new monthly pass. The pass will give you access to both online courses held that month, and remember, they are yours to download and keep after the event. Why not be part of this growing online magic community? Get your pass, join the chat room, and start learning magic and chatting to other members right now at the Alakazam Online Magic Academy. It's a fun, relaxed, and encouraging place for you to learn and improve your magic, whether you're a professional, semi-professional, or you're brand new to this wonderful hobby. Get your monthly pass today and save 20% by using the code MP20. That's MP for Magicians Podcast 20. You will have a great time if you join this month because there's some fantastic magicians on there. One of my personal favourites, Chris Rawlins, and the brilliant Joel Dickinson. Get yourself online and take a look at the Alakazam Online Magic Academy right now. Hello everybody, I'm Richard Young. Thank you very much for pressing the download button and welcome to the Magicians Podcast. There is a very real chance that by the end of this episode you will think differently about your magic and you might take a fresh look at it. The reason being, I have a brilliant guest in my hot seat this week. Richard McDougall is an intelligent, deep-thinking magician who has a fantastic perspective on not only the way we view magic, but on the way the audience views it. You're not going to regret listening to this week's episode. It's absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to share it with you. Very different from any other interview we've had so far this series. I think you're going to absolutely love it. Also, of course, we're going to find out who won the gold card registration for the Blackpool Magic Convention, courtesy of Gigio, and the £50 worth of credit at the Alakazam Magic Stand. And in order to do that, we need to check in with our friend Alan Hudson right now and find out what's going on. Alan Hudson, what's going on?
Young, I'm much better, thanks for asking.
Oh yeah, you were ill, weren't you? You're better this week, yeah?
Yeah, I was ill.
How long did that take to pass?
Do you know what? It was quite bad, really. It was about a week.
Ooh.
Yeah, but it's much better now, and I'm on form. I've got notes. I've got stuff to ask you. The kid's back.
That's good. So you were ill for the weekend. So I've got to ask a question. Did you lay down and die, or did you get up and do the fucking show?
I got up and did the fucking show, mate. That's what I did. I did a party. It was quite a nice one. It was one of these one table ones. So at least it was enjoyable to do. And that is 40-minute show around a table. It was lunchtime as well. So I was back home by 3 or 4 o'clock, and it was nice.
That's good.
Yeah, it was good.
If anybody doesn't get the get up and do the fucking show reference, that means you haven't listened to every episode this series. Isn't that right, Hudson?
I think that's the thing. I think with this little chat that we do at the beginning, really, you've got to listen to every single one. In fact, I think we should do more references and callbacks to other episodes, and that means that everyone has to listen to previous ones.
Agreed.
Otherwise, they don't know what we're talking about.
I do love a callback. So what's going on with you this week?
Well, this is what I thought we'd do this week, right? Is you are the interviewer, right? You are a broadcast journalist.
Yep,
right?
In my own mind. Yep.
Yes. So I thought, since you won't let me speak to the guests, right? Even though we've been inundated with tweets asking if I'll do it.
There was one more this week. This week.
Two more.
Was there two? I saw one.
There was two more. And even though being inundated, right, I thought, well, why don't I just ask you a few questions? Sir, Richard Young.
All right, you get 2 questions. That's it, because I don't want to be interviewed on this thing.
Okay, Richard Young, welcome to the Magicians Podcast. Can we have that crappy music you have at the start that's a bit too loud?
Everyone's moaning about it. I've tried to take care of that. I make a free podcast and I get a load of messages from people pissing and moaning that the music was too loud. I apologise. It doesn't sound too loud when I do the edit. We're all using different devices and different things. I tried to take care of it last week, so hopefully now the music isn't too loud at the start. But I do laugh when people piss and moan about a free podcast. I find that quite extraordinary.
They're called audio files, aren't they?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So Richard Young, welcome to the Magicians Podcast. And it's well documented that you are obsessed by money.
Yes.
Now, how much do you earn from Champions of Magic?
Well, this is the wonderful thing about being in a double act, is that it would be unfair of me to say, because I would also be giving out Sam Strange's financial information too. So unfortunately, I cannot answer that question. That is my answer to that question.
Right, I didn't think you'd answer this one. So I've got actually a proper question, right? And that is, how do you, and this is a genuine question, right? How do you decide who is going to be on this podcast? Because it's quite a mix, right? And I understand some people, when you've had like David Berglas on and Derren and Dynamo and people like that, but then you have other people like you had me, for instance, right? And Paul Martin, right? How do you decide that those people are going to be on it, as well as the more famous people? What's the criteria?
That's really interesting. Well, I do just try to give you all a mix of guests. I'm aware that we've got a very diverse audience here. I know there's 13-year-old magicians listening from the Young Magicians Club, and I know also we've got some magicians in their 70s and 80s listening. So I try to give a variety. But ultimately, I can say this: I have to be interested in the guests myself. It's a big effort to make an episode of this. It takes me a long time and everything. So I have to be genuinely interested in the person. And so
when you go and visit each of them.
I do, yeah. There's only ever been one that I didn't record in person, and that was Stuart of Barry and Stuart, and that's because he was in LA, and
right.
I could meet Barry, and I wanted them both together. So that was one time I made an exception where I didn't meet a guest face to face. But every other interview you've ever heard on this podcast, I'm sat with the guest face to face. The exception being you and I now. Alan, we're not in the same room. We are using a piece of technology to talk through the internet, but it's very good because it does sound like we're sat next to each other.
Yeah, it's good.
But every interview you ever hear other than that, I'm actually with the guest. But yeah, I choose them just based on. Can I swear? I can swear, can't I?
It's your podcast. It's the biggest magic podcast in the world, and it is your podcast, and you can swear.
Okay, I choose guests who are not fucking leeches. Okay. So basically, I choose people who are interesting, who have done something, who have given something back, who have an interesting perspective, have created something or are working towards something. You're never going to be on this podcast if you are just a jobbing close-up magician.
Right.
It's as simple as that. That is not interesting. There's nothing to talk about. So I talk to people who are interesting and have done something or have built something, or look at the last few weeks. We've had a guy who went, Tim Clothier, who's from the West Country, moved to Las Vegas, opened a company. We've had Rodney, who's from London, who moved to Spain, opened a magic venue.
That was a good interview, by the way, last week. I did enjoy it. That was it was a good fun one.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
People seem to really, really like it, and it was the first sort of interview of this series where guests have, where some of the listeners have fed back to me that they thought it was a really funny episode. So that was great. So well done, Rodney, because people seem to really, really like it. Yeah, controversial. Not everybody liked it, but I'll let Rodney tell you that story at Blackpool. A few people kicked off, didn't they? But
did they?
They did. Yeah, Rodney can tell you the story of that. It's not as controversial as it sounds, but it sounds exciting. So yeah, Rodney's was really great, and so I can, I never normally tell you who the guest is going to be next week.
No, that is your golden rule, isn't it? You never ever say who the guest is next week, apart from every week.
Exactly. So the guest next week is an amazing magician, not just from a performance point of view, but from, again, his journey and his story. So I was recently with Champions of Magic, we were in Buffalo, New York, doing a show. And Buffalo, New York is literally 20 minutes from the Canadian border. And just across the Canadian border is Niagara Falls. And right there is a theatre, and it's called the Greg Fruin Theatre. And I went and interviewed Greg Fruin, who many of you know. He was on World's Greatest Magic. He's been on Penn and Teller Fool Us. He was in FISM. And most interestingly, he has a 700-seat theatre right next to Niagara Falls, and he does a show every night. He has 70 employees, and
wow,
he has tigers, and it's a massive show with dancers, and yeah, he's got a magic shop with 2 guys working in it, and a restaurant, and it's an amazing facility, and it's a magic show, and I just absolutely had to try and interview him.
That's a good one. Like,
it's great.
Yeah.
I've already done the edit on it. It's a great podcast. It's full of interesting stories. He talks about the tigers again, even in more detail than Tim did last couple of weeks ago. And yeah, it's coming up next week. So Greg Fruin is on the Magicians podcast next week. The biggest thing for this podcast for me has been meeting the guests in person. If I was sat in my house using technology to talk to people, it would not be the same. Hudson, you've got a little job, my friend, this week.
Have I?
Which is quite exciting. Yeah, and that is you are about to choose the winner of our competition. So, do you remember
this is the trip to Blackpool.
Absolutely. So, Martin from Gigio got in touch and said, we're going to run this competition, and the prize will be a Blackpool gold card registration. Martin and I have since realised that probably a bad idea to do that competition in January, because most people booked their tickets last year.
Yes.
So we didn't have a huge number of entries. We had about 20, I think we had 21 entries on Instagram of people who posted a picture of where they were listening to the podcast. And Martin
that is not very many, because this is the #1 magic podcast in the world.
I'm glad you've said that twice now. Hopefully that people will start to believe
It'll start to stick. But it is. But you're right. I did think that, because I always book Blackpool straight away, like after the, as soon as the thing comes out to book the following one, I just book it.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
so
I think that most people do now, right?
What Martin has done here, he's emailed it to me. He has compiled a list of all of the people who entered the competition, and he's numbered them 1 to 21. They're in random order, not in the order that they posted the photos. And so, Hudson, if you give me a number between 1 and 21, I will announce right this second who has won the Blackpool Gold Card registration and £50 worth of credit at the Alakazam Magic Stand.
So you've loaded this up onto your digital force bag app.
I have indeed.
And then you're gonna swipe across to that number. If I said number 1, you swipe across, and then who's won? Richard Young.
Yeah, Richard Young's won.
So right, okay. Sorry, 21 did you say?
Yeah, 1 to 21.
Okay, 14.
Number 14 is Chris Campus. I hope I'm saying that right. Campus. Chris Campus has won the competition. Well done, Chris. There you go.
Hey, well done, Chris.
We will be dropping you a DM on Friday after this podcast comes out to let you know that you've won and figure out how to get the prize to you, and also arrange the credit at the Alakazam Magic Stand. And so there we go. So as that competition's now finished, Hudson, it's time to start the new competition, which, as I already mentioned,
to win a shot glass?
No, it's not. No? You must have a ton of those still sitting around, right?
I've got a few.
Maybe we should give.
Do you know what? I did a competition once, and I genuinely did this. I think they had to retweet it, right? And then I listed them all, and I scrolled them on a computer. So because I didn't do it with anybody else, scrolled them on a computer, and the person who won it was John Archer.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I couldn't be bothered to film it again, and so so he got one, and I think people thought it was a fix, but it genuinely wasn't. Yeah, So I sent John one. I mean, it's obviously he's never opened it or looked at it, but yeah. So the a shot glass. You say we're doing a competition for the shot glass?
No, we're doing a competition to win a Turner watch. So this has been the ongoing...
Bit of a come down, if you don't mind me saying.
So this thing is worth a lot of money and was basically the trick of last year, wasn't it? So if you don't know what a Turner watch is, where have you been, basically? It's an amazing trick which has been put out by Nobody Knows, Rory Adams' company. And he's very kindly sent us a Turner watch. to give away. So you enter in exactly the same way as the last competition, but I think we're going to have a few more entries this time. And that is get yourself on Instagram, post a photo of where you are listening to the Magicians Podcast. You do not have to be in the photo yourself, and you need to tag in 3 different accounts. One is the Magicians Podcast, second one is Alan Hudson, and the third one
Alan Hudson Magic
is Nobody Knows the Company, which their tag is just at Nobody Knows, NOBODYKNOWS. Tag all 3 in and you'll be entered into a prize draw. This runs until the 28th of February, and the winner of this competition will win a Turner watch worth over $350, and I will post it to you myself. It's already here. It's in the next room.
That is a good competition. And can I just say, if they mention that they are listening to the world's #1 magic podcast,
yes,
they stand more chance.
They do. Yeah.
I don't know how they stand more chance, because we will do it at random, but let's say they will stand more chance
if they call it the world's #1 magic podcast. Yeah, that will upset a few other magic podcasts, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, do you know who will upset?
Who?
The ones that are number 2, 3, 4 and 5.
There's a lot of magic podcasts out there these days. That's why I've had to up my game and start giving shit away. Have you got your Turner watch, by the way? What do you think of it?
I've got my Turner watch. I'll be honest, I've not done it at a gig yet, because I've not been doing that many gigs, because it's January, and the only thing I'm doing at the moment is my tax return.
How's that going? What was the bill?
I've not had it yet, actually. When I say it, I'm doing it. My accountant's doing it, isn't he?
You got an accountant, have you?
Who does it themselves?
I used to do it myself, and Strange used to have an accountant, and I used to say, I don't understand why you're paying an accountant, because it's so easy, you just do it yourself. And then when Young and Strange came around as a business, it got a bit complicated. So
and you started earning the big bucks.
Not the big bucks.
How much did you just say again? You went for champions?
So we now have an accountant who looks after Young and Strange, Sam Strange Magic, and Richard Young Magic, the 3 businesses. And I was completely wrong. If you don't have an accountant, you're an idiot. An accountant will save you a lot of money.
That's the thing. My accountant, right, is not that much money. Is like a few hundred quid. I don't even know how much it is, but it's somewhere between 300 and 500 quid, right?
Right.
Now, I reckon he saves me more than that per year.
Oh, easily.
Right, because he just knows all the little bits and pieces to do, right?
Yep.
And you go, and I don't have to do anything. I tell him how much I earn. I give him all my statements, right? I give him a bag of receipts that are in a Tesco carrier bag, right? And I just go, I drop them off. I go, there you go. And then he shakes his head at me and goes, right? And then we go through this little rigmarole every year. And then I promise him, next year I'll do it nicely. I'll get an app or something. And he goes, oh great, next year Sainsbury's carrier bag. I just upgraded the carrier bag.
It's a bag for life now, right?
2020, waitress.
That's
that's all I do. And then I just know he's going to save me more money than that, and I don't have to do anything. So yeah. So I've just had to. He's asked me a few questions today. That was it, and so that's what's going on.
That's good. So this week's episode.
Sorry,
go on.
Before you do that, can I just tell you a story?
Go for it.
So last week, RJP, right, who is, let's be honest, the David Brent of magic.
That's perfect. He is, yeah.
Like Rodney, he's so entertaining, right? And if you can see him at Blackpool or wherever, he's such a generous guy, so funny. But he has got like a little turn of phrase that just makes you laugh, right? And it's just the way he is. It's just he's one of the true characters, isn't he? In magic, he's like a little bit Del Boy. He's a little bit like a sort of almost like a car salesman type guy, but with a strong knowledge of magic. And ask him anything about illusions, he'll tell you. And I love him to bits. He's a good friend, but he has got a good sort of turn of phrase. And I do think actually people should start making some memes of Rodney. Like Bros. Did you watch the Bros documentary?
I did not. No, my sister always loved Bros.
So there's this Bros documentary, right? And what's happened is they say some ridiculous things on it, and so there's a lot of memes now going around on the internet with little phrases. But if anybody can be bothered, it'd be quite nice to do take some quotes from Rodney's interview. and do some little memes.
I don't know how to make memes.
Anyway, so yeah, it's a good interview, right? And one thing he said, which has happened to us all, I think that thing about the corporate event. You know, when he said, I got introduced like this. It's a free bar. Ladies and gentlemen, two things. One, we've got a free bar. Also, we've got some, and that's going on in another room. Also, we've got some entertainment. Please welcome Rodney James Piper.
Yeah,
right. Does that happen to you?
Yes, it has.
Yeah, it happened to me. Right. There you go. But it did remind me of another introduction I had. Right, and it was at Magic Night. Now, Magic Night is in Soho, and it was at Madame Jojo's, and there used to be. Like everyone was on that show, like all the magicians, like doing an interesting act, like Pete Fairman, Barry Stewart. Did you do it?
Yeah, Young Strange did it a couple of times. Yeah, it was Katia, wasn't it? It used to book it.
Yes,
I think it's closed down now, isn't it?
Yeah, Dave Loosely from Alakazam was on it before, when he was a fat kid before he started running.
Yeah, amazing that he's done that.
Amazing.
He told me that the podcast really helped him with weight loss. He listens to the Magician's podcast when he goes for a run.
He looks good now.
He looks great. He does look great.
He looks good. He's an inspiration to everybody. So this is one introduction I had, right? Now I was going on last on this night. It doesn't mean you're the best. It just means Barry and Stewart are a much bigger act, and they get to decide if they want to go home early. Right? That's what happens there.
Absolutely true.
They go, can we go on and go off again so we can go home? And they go, yeah, you're the number ones. So yeah, this is the introduction I had. Right? So imagine, right, it was end of the night. The compere was doing sort of little juggling bits, but he finished with this. He went, ladies and gentlemen, no, one more thing just before I bring on the last act. I thought I'd do a little trick for you. And he had a pint of beer, which he balanced on his head, right? And then got all the audience to clap, right? Going bang, 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 clap your hands, bang. And then he got this pipe, and he put the pipe in the pint glass, put the other pipe in his mouth. He started juggling three objects, and at the same time of juggling three objects, he was sucking the beer down, the pint of beer, from the pint into his mouth. The finale was throwing the objects in the air, throwing the pint glass off, catching them all, holding his arms out, almost like a standing ovation after this big thing, and then go, ladies and gentlemen, now welcome Alan Hudson. How would you follow that?
What was your opening bit then as well? All right, is that with it? All right.
Yeah, that's it. Hudson fucked over.
That's brilliant. What was the other thing I was going to say? So we just talking about sort of strange places to perform with strange introductions. So I've just got back today from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So Champions of Magic performed in Minneapolis last weekend, and we did this.
Yeah, good money.
And in the days running up to it, we did this unusual promotion which we've never done before. So normally when we're doing shows, what happens is you rock into town a few days before, and you're on like the morning news, or like the local radio, and you talk about the show. This was unusual. So in Minneapolis, there's a place called the Mall of America. It's the biggest mall in America. It's absolutely unreal. Like, if you think Westfield is big, or the Trafford Centre, you have no idea. This mall, in the middle of it, has a theme park that would rival, like, Richard McDougall's theme park, Bream theme park or something. Like, it's got roller coasters, loads of rides. Like, it's massive, and it's in the middle of a mall. And this mall is 4 stories high. And so the promotion we did was we had a stage built, and there was this massive 40-foot LED wall, and we did a show in front of it every 2 hours for 2 days. And so it was great, because basically we were doing the show, and then in between, it was only Strange Night, it wasn't the other magicians. We were just doing like a 15-minute show, and then we had an hour and 45 minutes off to go and play in the theme park. We got free wristbands. It was brilliant.
Nice.
But that was kind of, on paper, sounded like a dreadful
terrible
gig, right?
Yeah.
And this never, ever has it been clearer how important it is actually to just make sure you can be seen and heard. Because in the Mall of America, we could be seen, and there was good audio, and it worked brilliantly. People stood around, they watched the whole thing, they didn't walk off, they clapped, and it was great. And so suddenly this gig that sounded dreadful actually worked brilliantly. So I think that's, you remember the stories from years ago that Paul Daniels used to travel around in when he was doing the working men's clubs, and he would travel around with his own light and that he would put up to make sure the audience could see him. It's the most...
Yeah, that was his thing, wasn't it? That was his thing. Always be seen, always be heard. And I know that sounds like very basic advice, but that is really, really good advice if you remember that.
So this is... we should probably wrap this up now.
Yeah, go on. So this week's guest
is Richard McDougall. So this is a fantastic podcast you're about to hear. This is a very, very different to last week. Very thought-provoking. And I have to really, really thank someone. As when I do my research for these podcasts, in recent times, I tried to talk to a friend of the guest because they know them really, really well. And Richard McDougall as you're about to hear, went to school with Noel Britton.
Yes.
And I got in touch with Noel and I said, I'm going to interview Richard, can you give me some help? Well, he didn't just give me some help. He basically gave me the interview you're about to listen to. What you're basically about to hear is Noel Britton interviewing Richard McDougall when they've known each other for 40 years, just through my voice, because Noel wasn't there. So I have to thank him enormously. All of the questions I asked that are really interesting and that provoke great answers from Richard are Noel's questions. I ended up scrapping most of mine, actually.
Right. What questions were you going to ask? Are you busy?
I was going to ask him how much money he earns.
Yeah.
So, I think people are going to absolutely love this podcast because Richard has a really interesting perspective on not why magic goes well, but why sometimes it goes badly and how we sometimes just totally forget what it's supposed to be about. I can't wait to talk to you about this next week, actually. I think you're going to absolutely love it.
Do you know what? Can I suggest an idea?
Yeah, go for it.
Probably should have asked you this before. Why don't you put on the Magician's Facebook page some clips of Richard McDougall? Because I think there's a lot of people that might have never have seen him.
I think you're right. Well, you'll hear. I first saw him when he was on Stuff the White Rabbit years ago.
Yeah, so I saw him do the cigarette thing. You know, the mime act with the cigarettes, where he stood on the chair, and he's got the music, and he opens the packet of cigarettes and there's none in there, and then he starts making an invisible roll-up one, and then it all happens from there. That was on Stuff the White Rabbit, wasn't it? And then
I'll see what I can find online.
But even if they haven't seen him, I've not heard the interview yet, but I know this is going to be a great one because he's such a good talker. He's such a good thinker about magic. I've seen him lecture before as well. Like he really has some great thoughts on magic, and instantly you have those wow moments where you just go, oh, why didn't I think of that before? Yep. Oh, that's going to make my act better. That, oh my God, right? And there's always a couple of those moments whenever he speaks. Yep. So this, if he's got some of them in it, this could be a classic Magicians podcast one.
I think this is about to become an instant classic Magicians podcast. So Hudson, thanks very much for this week, and I will talk to you again next Friday, my friend, and I really hope you enjoy this interview with Richard McDougall. Here we go. Richard McDougall, welcome to the Magicians podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Finally.
A long time.
I was thinking, sometimes things just don't work out. We've tried to do this a few times, haven't we? And various different reasons, schedules, people being busy. But you're finally here, which is fantastic.
Honoured to be part of it.
And I'm going to tell the audience where we are. So we're in the inner sanctum here at the Magic Circle, and we were just waiting for the room to become free. And we stood outside, and there's a poster, a wonderful poster on the wall of Alan Allen, who was your mentor. And I said to you, let's start with this, shall we? So please, let's start with Alan. Now, when did you first meet him? And
So I was at school with Noel Britton.
Yes, of course.
So I met him when I was 12. Noel was into magic and showed me a couple of magic tricks and challenged me to work them out, which I could work out one of them and I couldn't work out the other.
Do you remember the trick?
I remember the trick that I could work out was a trick with a wooden box and coloured blocks, and you put a nail through it.
I remember that.
You had to name two colours and they dropped off. The one that he wouldn't show me was finger guillotine, actually. There's a good story about that. Anyway, so we got talking about magic and all the rest of it, and he said, oh, there's a magic shop opening up in London. Would you want to go? So we went along, and it was Alan Allen's Magic Spot in Holborn. And it had literally only just opened a couple of days before, I think. We were probably one of the first customers in there. And we went in, and there were boxes piled up. So we thought, oh, that's just how it looks. You know, he hasn't unpacked everything yet.
And how old are you both at this point?
14.
Okay.
There's this little guy inside behind the counter. The counter's already messy with ash all over the table, junk all over the table. And it stayed exactly the same for 35 years. In fact, some of those boxes that were in there when we first walked in were still there, unopened, 35 years later. And he's had a big nail through his head, sometimes a big safety pin through his head. He didn't look that impressive, but Noel had seen him on television just a couple of days before doing the acrobatic matchbox, which was one of Alan's real things he always carried with him. And Noel had told me about how this trick looked. He said, this matchbox crawls along your arm, turns around, stands up, and the drawer opens. I was thinking, what on earth can that be? And we went in and Noel asked about it, and he did it for us, and of course bought it straight away. I had just seen a phenomenal magic show on television which had really cemented my desire to go into it, which had Harry Blackstone in it doing the dancing handkerchief. Val Swaddling was in it as well, and he did the brainwave deck. So I said to him, I don't suppose you've got this thing which he did, which I bought, and then also, which was very useful for a 14-year-old, he sold me a cigarette pull, which was very useful to have at that age, obviously.
It's a different world, wasn't it?
Yeah, different world, yeah. But that started this long friendship, relationship that we had, Noel, myself. I met Michael Vincent there, he was a year younger, and Chris Wood, who was a great English magician as well. So over the next 30 or 35 years, we had this relationship with him. He was an extraordinary man. He's not an easy man to like. Many people had found it difficult being around him because he was very blunt. But he was one of the two most remarkable people I've met in my life. And there is not a day goes by, even today, where I don't consider something that he's said. So he was ostensibly telling us about performing, but really there were life lessons. And it was an extraordinary relationship. You wouldn't really want to ask him what he thought of your act. Noel's great phrase was, asking Alan for an opinion about your act was a bit like bleeding near a shark, because he would just come straight for the kill, and it was painful. It was very, for all of us, even, I mean, for people he weren't in a circle of friends, people who listened to him a lot, he was really blunt. But even to us, he pulled no punches because he wanted you to be able to take it. So it was harsh, really harsh. But he was right. He was always right, which was so annoying.
And tough love, right? And he's produced
tough love, yeah.
3 amazing magicians that you've named there.
Yeah.
You, Noel, and Michael.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And Chris is now doing extremely well with his close-up shows, but Michael was his favoured son, and Noel and I would go along a lot. I learnt so much about performance from him. We're sitting here in the inner sanctum. I'm looking straight up at a picture of him now.
There he is. I didn't notice that. Yeah.
I used to have that signed, that picture, above my bed at home. I had Siegfried and Roy and a picture of Alan Allen. So, yeah, it was. He was an amazing man, and the things he taught us about magic in particular, but performing in general, were mind-opening. Actually, I had not even considered some of the things he talked about, and I was still using them today.
I obviously met him, but it was before this podcast was around. I never got a chance to interview him. I wonder if you have any insight into the upside down straitjacket escape that he was known for. Did he ever talk to you about it, about the process of that?
He'd started out as an escape artist when he was very young, and he nearly died in his first escape, which was the buried alive escape. And if you look on Pathé News, you can see him being buried alive and almost dying because he had a piece of string to hand up to somebody outside, but when they put the sand back on top, the spectators had been digging him in, they all stood on top and banged it down, which they weren't supposed to do, and he nearly died. And we asked him about it afterwards, said, how are you going to get out? And he said, do you know what, my luck was so bad at that time and I had nothing going for me. He said, I didn't really care. I had no idea I was going to get out.
Wow.
And then the very next day he was walking down Charing Cross Road and a man shouted across from the street, are you the guy that was on Pathé News doing the escape thing? He went, yeah. He said, you got an act? He went, yeah. He said, I've got some bookings for you. And from that day on, he was performing non-stop. He ended up being the highest paid speciality act in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah. Do I know how his act was done? No. I've held the chains, I've held the handcuffs. I never asked him. It's so odd.
So I've got to jump in there because I was listening carefully, and one of the things you said was there were two remarkable people. Who's the second person?
Well, the three actually. The second would be David Owen, who people in the magic world may not know. He's a QC, he's a barrister. He's got a background in law. He was a Young Magician of the Year. He won that in some time back. His picture's hanging up in upstairs in the Magic Circle. He has got the most brilliant intellect, brilliant mind to understand a problem or a situation, whether that's in magic or outside of magic. He's got empathy on a level that I could only dream of having, and magic lacks empathy. There's not enough empathy in magic, and he really gets it. And he's got the most extraordinary way of delivering information with clarity and simplicity, and he's a fantastic magician. He's to see some of his routines, his sax knife routine, or a couple of other routines, storytelling, beautiful storytelling. So he's been a remarkable person to know. The third, we've mentioned him before, is Noel Britton, who I've known since I was 12. Again, in terms of intellect and analysis, I've known him 40 years, and he still blows me away, really. As a spirit, the most generous, kindest person as a friend, you couldn't wish for anyone better. But as a performer, he's the one, other than David, I probably think, and Guy. Actually, Guy Hollingworth is the other one I would say is a remarkable. I do know some remarkable people. Guy Hollingworth is remarkable in many, many levels. But Noel combines the intellect, again, great empathy, phenomenal wit, and just craftsmanship of the highest order. When he was doing his stand-up comedy, he would be doing his bizarre Bath walk, then he would drive on to do a comedy club, then he would come to me to stay the night at about 1 a.m, and he was still, even then, writing and editing material and reading. He knows everything about magic, and he's the best friend you could possibly wish for.
Can I add a little something to that?
Yes.
So you said he's generous, and I want to say something he did for me a long time ago. In fact, it was the first time we ever met. So he lectured here at the Magic Circle around 2008. Yeah. And he did this wonderful talk about how we're not as good as we think we are, and it really connected with me. And I just turned professional, and no one had heard of me. I was just a jobbing magician in Oxford, and I landed this gig that I felt a bit of pressure with, and I started to wonder if someone could help me. And I remembered Noel. I'd watched the talk, and I emailed him. Bear in mind, he's never heard of me, doesn't know who I am, and I said, you don't know me, but I watched your talk, and some of the things you said, I realised I don't do those things, and I've got this gig coming up. I wonder if I could sort of bring my act to you, and you could help me. Let me be blunt. I was shit, okay? I was shit. I was right at the beginning of my professional journey, and I drove to Bath, and he said yes, first of all, which is amazing, because most magicians probably wouldn't even reply, and he hired the village hall across from his house, and sat in there with me all day, going through my act, trying to help me. And at the end of the day, I tried to give him some money to thank me, and he wouldn't take it. And he had never met me before that day.
He's like that with so many people. And if you ask for his opinion and you want his opinion, and he gives you his opinion, listen to it. Because he's got Alan's genes through his, he's taken it all on. He's got his own very distinctive, clear opinions. And he's the one person I will go to first, actually, and go, what do you think? Because his analysis is like a laser, but with a heart that is just remarkable. So these people are mentioning, Guy, David, Noel, Dave, I'm very lucky that they're my friends. Really, I'm blessed with those. That out of everything in magic, you can knock magic all you like, but my goodness me, doesn't it bring us into contact with some of the most wonderful people you could possibly wish
wonderful
to meet.
And unusual people.
Yeah. No, I've also met some of the worst people. I remember that great Ricky Jay quote. He said that magic's brought him more pain and more pleasure than almost anything else in his life.
That's great. So your training, I understand, was actually in mime and physical comedy. Can you tell us about that? Are there any things that you learned from that kind of made the journey across into your actual magic? Maybe obviously your act that we'll talk about with your silent act.
Right.
Is there anything you can talk to us
Yes, I mean, I had been doing magic for quite some time, and then when I was about 23, I felt I wanted to learn something slightly different to bring into that. So I went to study mime in London with a man called Desmond Jones, who was a brilliant teacher. I recommended him so highly. Paul Keeve went to study with him. Louis de Matos went to study with him. Raphael from Belgium went to study with him. Quite a few magicians went to study with him. And we spent the first week learning how to walk. How do you walk properly? So your posture is good. So it was about detail, it was about clarity, it was about learning about stillness and learning that movement matters. How you move, how everything moves, but they all have a meaning. So it's about being aware. And the great thing about being there was that at the end of every day's class, he would set you a topic and you had to create a 5-minute routine. He gave you 15 minutes, you had to get 4 of you together, you had to do a routine, and then he'd critique it. And that level of creativity under pressure was a great discipline. You know, you're in a small space, go. You are on a boat, go. You are not allowed to speak to each other while you're collaborating, go. You go, jeepers, and you just have to do it. You have to turn up and do it. So I studied with him, and then I went over to Paris to study with a guru of performance called Philippe Gaulier, who's sort of I guess he's like a Vernon, but of the physical comedy and performing world. Again, a hard taskmaster, but an extraordinary mind about physical comedy and about performing on stage. His first lesson was you walk in, with about 30 of you in the class, and we're all sitting in a line against one side of the wall, and each of us had to get up, go out of the room, and then he'd say, come in and make us laugh. You can do whatever you want, make us laugh. But if I'm bored, I will bang my stick on the floor. If I'm really bored, I'll bang it a second time, and if I'm really fed up, a third time, you go off, next goes up. So you go, crikey, all right. So you go outside and you think, oh, I know what I'll do this. And you walk in and you go, good. Well, I haven't started, but I haven't even, next.
Wow.
And he wouldn't tell you what it was. You had to learn it. So sometimes it would hit, someone would have a little moment and you go, oh. And you go, Pamal, not bad. More. And you go, what's he doing? And then at the end of this class, 2.5 hours later, he would sort of deconstruct what happened. But you realise you had to be on straight away, but B, more importantly, don't come in with all your clever ideas. Just come in and be.
Oh, that's fascinating, yeah. I have a very similar experience at tables when I do close-up magic. You know, the three taps and you're out. Barely get past my introduction. So something I want to talk about, because there's so much to talk about with you, but this also all links in to the fact then you took your act to FISM as well. So was that always, the reason I'm asking now is, was that always the plan?
No.
That you were gonna create an act and go to FISM, or was it just you created the act and thought, oh, I'll take it to FISM?
Yeah, it was very much so. I wanted to travel, and I thought, gosh, going around magic conventions is a nice thing to do. I had done a few competitions. I'd done the IBM with another act, and I'd done that twice, and I had this basic outline of the act to go to FISM, and then I thought, oh, no, actually I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone. I'll go and do it. And I had tremendous help. I mean, never has so many people put so many hours into so few minutes. I had Noel Britton made some phenomenal observations and gave me some of my best moments in it by far. Brilliant misdirection things he came up with. Pat Page came up with brilliant moments. Paul Keeve, Duncan Trillo. I mean, I had the cream of people to pick on. And then I got myself a director who's now writing Hollywood films. I mean, he was a brilliant performer in his own right, and he really polished it up.
Does it sort of drive you crazy when you watch magic shows that clearly not had a director? Can you spot it?
I mean, I find it very difficult watching magic.
Why is that?
I just find the attitude is all wrong, and I think we've done everything back to front. I think the intent of the performer is wrong, and therefore all the frailties and weaknesses are shown up so clearly.
So what do you mean by elaborate on that a little bit. I love it. It's deep, but yeah, explain what you mean by it.
Okay, well, I had a sort of slight epiphany moment last year. Last year, January. Last year, I do quite a lot of speaking now, and I gave a talk, not on magic, on something really personal. It was a storytelling night, and there were about 500 people there, and it was difficult for me to do, but it went well, thankfully. And afterwards, people came up. Nobody came up and said well done at the end. Nobody. Everyone who came up at the end of it said thank you. And actually, if people come up at the end of a magic show and say well done, they're saying well done you, and you go, oh, well done me, I did very well. My first point is, you don't know actually if it's done well. There's only two people I know if it's done well, or someone I trust who's my peer knows it's done well. Lay people don't know if it's done well. They just say well done. But the second thing is, well done you is very different from saying thank you.
Yes.
Because you've given them something. And actually, I think the intent of most magicians is for people to say, gosh, you were brilliant.
Right.
And that is a fundamental flaw in the performance of magic, I would suggest, because when we teach the young people at Breathe, on day one, we tell them, remember, this is not about showing off. Magic is a little gift. It's a present. You don't buy someone a nice present and fling it across the table in the Sainsbury's bag. You wrap it up and you make it look nice and you go, this is for you, and you enjoy seeing their face and they go, thank you. And if they don't do that, I think we failed.
How do you think we can do that as an industry? I mean, so we got two examples. We'll look at close-up magic and stage magic.
Yeah.
How do you think with close-up magic we could, like you said, give them something as opposed to just entertaining ourselves?
Well, you've just got to change your intent. It's not, I put myself in it, I've done a lot of it. We go out into close-up and try and survive, which we want to, all the terminology. Oh, I killed them, blew them away, all that frazzle them and all that nonsense. You've completely got the wrong end of the stick. You're there to make them feel better. Preferably about themselves, actually. And you're the conduit to do that. So if you change your attitude and instead of going, right, I'm going to go in and I'm going to hit them with flaming wallet and whatever the things are people have got these days, buzzy things. Actually, I don't think it's about that. I think if you ask people, welcome to the party. I've been asked to come over here. Hope you're having a nice evening. Is everything all right? I mean, make people feel nice.
Yeah.
We're trying to sell ourselves way ahead of too early, and people are like, what? What are you doing? That's why I know this is quite controversial, but working to tables of 10, I think is a really big statement you're making if you go up and say to everybody, shut up and watch me for 10 minutes, because you're interrupting 5 conversations.
Yeah.
There could be 5, someone could be flirting, someone could be having a business meeting, someone could be talking about their healthcare treatment at the moment, someone could be talking about their son about to get married, and you're interrupting all 5 of those at once.
Yeah. And
saying, whatever it is you've got to talk about, I've got something more impressive. Wow, that's a big ask, is my opinion. And I know there are 1 or 2 who do it very well. I think there are an awful lot. I'm not so sure what those 10 people are really thinking sitting around the table.
Yeah.
So
what about in stage, Richard, then? So how can we, I know you said about change the intent, but it's a different process entirely, isn't it, with stage? You go.
Well, we're very trick orientated, aren't we? And we're not very performer orientated. And for me, the problem with magicians is there is not nearly enough emphasis put on learning how to perform. So you've just done a lot of shows on the run, amazingly, to these huge crowds, and your performing skills have improved massively, I imagine, because you've experienced it and looking at it from a different way. You know your act. That's, as Alan Allen would always say, you've got to know your stuff. That's in the box. We've done that. What else is there? So really being able to understand performing skills is the name of the game. And at the bottom line, that is, as Alan Allen would say, is communication. I don't think we're very good at communication skills, both on stage and close up.
Yeah.
So I would suggest if we spent a little more time on that and a little less time spending hundreds on the latest Rubik Cube thingy, Bobby, I think we might be able to get more from less. Working with these young people I work with for the Breathe, the biggest lesson I got was here at the Magic Circle, because they have to do a magic show at the end of their camp. So there are a lot of people here, and we had one child who was about 8 or 9 at the time, and these are young people who've got a condition called hemiplegia, so they've had a brain injury, so they've got severe challenges both in hands and arms, sometimes in the legs, and this particular boy had other challenges as well. He couldn't speak very clear. I mean, you could barely understand him. He dribbled because of his condition in his mouth. He had really thick glasses on. It took 2 of us to get him up on stage and 2 of them to get back down. He's in bright lights, really bright lights. Never been in bright lights like that before. 100 people. It was pretty full, mostly strangers. And he was going to do the rope cutter. That was his thing. And the moment he started, he was laughing his head off. He was in his state. He loved it. And he tore the place apart. And all an audience wants to see is the performer be. And be happy while they're doing it.
Yes.
They don't care what you look like. They don't care what trick you're going to do. They just want to see you be happy.
That's fascinating, yeah. I think that's really good.
The Magicians Podcast, brought to you in association with the Magic Circle, the world's premier magical society. Are you ready to join the world's most exclusive magic club? Visit themagiccircle.co.uk to find out more.
Gigi-O, free for 30 days. Be a pro, get Gigi-O.
Harry De Cruz says it not only makes it easier for you to handle your bookings, but easier for your clients too. What's he talking about? Well, Gigi-O, of course. Top professional magicians love using Gigi-O to manage their bookings and admin. It's an easy-to-use, web-based software that takes care of your inquiries, contracts, invoices, payments, and reports. You can generate professional PDF contracts in seconds and allow your clients to agree them quickly, online, and conveniently. It will even automatically update the diary on your phone. Read what other magicians say about Gigi-O and take a free 30-day trial right now at getgigio.com, spelled GETGIGGIO.com.
Whether you're new to magic or a seasoned professional, Alakazam Magic are here to help. Alakazam have been supplying magic to magicians for well over 20 years. Not only do we carry all the latest and greatest magic tricks, books and DVDs, but we also manufacture one of the finest ranges of magic tricks in the world. The Alakazam name is synonymous with great customer service, educated advice and honesty. So if you're shopping for new magic, make sure you check out our website www.alakazam.co.uk or pay a visit to our fully stocked shop.
So when I first saw you, I love these stories I can tell occasionally, because I was a kid growing up, and it's a different world now. Everything wasn't on YouTube. My mum and dad would let me stay up on a Friday night to watch Stuff the White Rabbit, and so that was the first time I ever saw you do your cigarette act, which I'd love to talk about the act actually, and I've never really ever seen anything else like it, to be completely honest with you. I'd love to know what your process was with it, and also where the inspiration for it came from originally, because it's... Well, I have a theory. Can I tell you my theory?
You tell me your theory.
I remember you saying to me a long time ago you loved Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if he was an influence.
Yes, he was, as were Laurel and Hardy, huge influence. So while I was learning magic in my teens, I was spending a lot more time watching Laurel and Hardy and Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd than I was watching magicians. Particularly Laurel and Hardy. I still have the notebooks I have at home. I rented a video recorder so I could record it off the television when they were running the whole series, and I used to sit with a stopwatch and time some of the jokes and the looks and all the rest of it. I thought that was scientifically unbelievable. They are still just extraordinary. So I had them as a framework, and then I had my magic idol, even in my teens when I didn't know anything really about it, was Cardini. So Alan Allen had talked about Cardini, Pat Page had seen Cardini, Alan had performed with him. Bobby Bernard who was a well-known character in the Magic Circle, he had seen and knew Cardini, and everyone I spoke to, and then I'd hunt out, I'd come down here and I'd hunt out magazines that might have a little snippet or a review or an article about him or a picture. Never seen the film, it wasn't available then, so I just imagined what that would be. So yeah, I didn't see the film till I was in my late 20s, I think, but I liked that idea of the magic happening to him, and I loved the idea of it being concealed art. I thought that really appealed to me.
Sure. There was also the other thing you did on Stuff the White Rabbit with Harry at the piano as well. What's the story with that?
Well, so Harry, for London-based magicians or English magicians, performers, Harry is absurdly talented. I mean, you know, to say he plays the piano is like saying he can play anything. He's non-stop working all the time. A great performer and great mind. I was touring with him, Faye Presto. We went up to the Edinburgh Festival with Fluke, who was a great act doing acrobatics and magic, and we created that. I suspect it was probably Harry's. It sounds like Harry's humour because he's a great wordsmith.
So we should probably tell people, in case they haven't seen it. The idea is that you have a card chosen, and then you are the pianist sees the card, and then the pianist is trying to let you know what the card is by playing certain songs that mention diamonds and things. So and the comedy is you don't understand what he's getting at.
And I keep trying. I know he's trying to pass me a code, but I don't know what the code is.
Yeah.
And it worked. I like the interplay of music and magic, and we often performed together doing my other act, my cigarette act, with him and a sax and a drum player, which was great to do it live.
I spoke to Noel Britton ahead of today. He's really helped me a huge amount with this interview, and there's something he told me which when I read it, I read it twice, like, what? And it's not an insult to the performer, it just surprised me. He said you're a big fan of Michael Carbonaro. And I'd love to know what it is, because often with performers who have been around a while, they like older performers. And this guy's so current at the minute. What is it that's connected you with him?
I watch him with total joy. He has got all the charm that seems to be missing from most magicians. He's got all the warmth. He's a brilliant improviser, and it's a celebration of confusion. He reminds us that it's very profound. I think his show is quite profound, really, because he reminds us that although we're moving forward incredibly fast technologically wise, we don't know a bloody thing. And we think we do, and we're just saying yes to everything that we say. Oh yeah, I guess it's just technology, it's just doing it. And yet he can riff straight off that. He's always listening to his audience. Magicians never listen to their audience. They've got the script in their head, but he will hear something and he'll even ask, what was that? And they'll say, it's probably the I don't know, the whatever it is they come up their own theory, and he goes, yeah, that's right, it is exactly that. So he's really listening. And at the end, again, when he reveals it, there's never a feeling of, gotcha, tricked you. Fool us, great successful programme, vile title, really. And other programmes that have that concept of, gotcha. No, that's why I never use the word trick.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this before. You don't like the word trick, and you explain that why, when you say someone, would you like to see a trick, and you go, well, that's not a pleasant process.
No.
It's like almost feels like a con. Do I want
well,
to be
you've already said what the answer is. There is a trick to this. There is a something to this. So actually, in our analogy of giving a present, you've already said there's no generosity to that, because you've already given them an out to it. And yet with him, he would go, well, at that moment he goes, it's also the name of a hidden camera magic TV show, and they're still nodding and looking at the object in their hand and going, oh yeah, and he'll say, which is like the one you're on right now, and they stop and then they look up, and then there's a moment of the penny dropping, and it's joy on his face. It's a communal experience, and he'll go, first of all, he'll hug them, he'll say, you're the best, you were great, and I think it's done sincerely, and he'll go, I know, it would seem like that, wouldn't it? I thought that it could be like that. So there is no malice, there is no cynicism. It's brilliantly constructed, brilliantly written, and an utter joy, and he deserves everything he gets coming to him.
I love hearing the passion in your voice. You're a perfect podcast guest, actually, because there's passion. And I want to talk about something we've already talked about, but it was before we pressed the record button, which was we were just catching up, and you told me how you went to see Circus 1903 with your friend David Williamson, who's been on this podcast. Yeah. Every magician knows how amazing it is, but you said this was just on a whole nother level.
Well, in a way, I hope he doesn't hear this, because I'm a good friend with him, and he'll just go, oh. But I was so overjoyed for him to see him having this amazing canvas to put some, not all, I think he's got a lot more still to come, some of his extraordinary talent on stage. Talk about generosity of spirit. It's remarkable. You know, he is, I know lots of people say he's the best magician. He's the only one, first of all, who's got magic bones and funny bones. There is nobody else. You know, so I saw him the next day. He was doing some card stuff. I was like, I mean, it's just ridiculous level of skill. Ridiculous. He is incredibly generous on stage. He always looks after the people. Or I've never seen, and so many times I see someone doing an act and they say, can we have someone up on stage? And they just stand in the middle and wait for people to do this kind of walk of shame across the... He's there with, he's one of us all the time. And he's the only magician I've seen who's rubbed out all the pencil lines. You don't see any of his inner working at all. Nothing. I mean, you know, there's 50,000 shows that have gone into making that look like nothing. And it's...
What do you mean? Elaborate on that a bit, because that's fascinating. What do you mean by he's rubbed out the pencil lines? You
well,
mean you
most
can't
people,
see
you can't see... It looks like we're watching it in real time. Or everyone else, I'm sorry, I'm going to put all of us in it. You can see the performer working, either mentally or physically. You know there's stuff going on. They're working. With David, he's completely present. And that's why he can make such amazing moments of situational comedy, because he's in the moment. He's playing it for real each time. He's not doing shtick. Even though he's repeating it, he's managed to rub out all those lines 3 shows a day. He's on another level entirely. And it's, again, sorry to sound a bit disappearing up your own backside, but it's actually quite profound watching him perform, because it takes so much thought to make it look so like nothing's happening.
It's amazing. So what you're saying is that we all need to do thousands of shows to make it look like we haven't done thousands of shows, in a way.
Yeah. You have to rub out all the pencil lines. It must look like it's happening in real time, in the moment.
And he's a master of making that happen with nothing, as you said as well.
Yeah, but I mean, there again, you know, I was fortunate enough, I've done a few conventions with him. I did a FISM with him one year, and we were backstage before a close-up gala, and we were all fiffle-faffling around with our stuff, doing our stuff, and he walks in and goes, can I borrow that glass? Oh, can I borrow your keys? And what's that thing, that chair? I'll have that chair. And you go, what are you doing? And he's going, I'm just trying to work out. And of course you go on and absolutely knock it out of the park. But as John Carney once said, there's nothing more exciting than seeing a great mind in a panic.
That's a great quote.
Because he's going through his Rolodex of material like at such a speed. I had the pleasure of working with him in Portugal once for Luis de Matos, and we had to do street shows. And he didn't have an act, and I certainly didn't have an act. I'd taken some props with me, some odd props. I'd taken a bullet, I'd taken my front door mat, I'd taken a rabbit and a balloon and a kazoo. That's all I had. I sort of vaguely knew what I wanted to do, and I told him something, and he walked me into a shop. We're going next door. I went, what are we doing? And he walked in and he picked up a saucepan, banged it with a spoon, and said, don't buy that. I said, I don't want a saucepan. So he picked up that, buy that one. Right, I don't need it, buy that one. Bought a frying, not that frying pan, buy that frying pan. He was banging these things. I thought, what on earth is going on here? But I bought them, and he sort of explained it, and it was brilliant. In the end, it was me getting someone to do a bullet catch with a kazoo, with a toy gun that I'd taken, with someone else having to pop the balloon at the right time. So of course that timing all went wrong. They were firing over their shoulder with a dentist mirror that I'd taken, and the other people in the audience dotted around were making a ricochet sound. So it went ding, 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 catch,
wow,
into the thing.
That's amazing.
And the final joke, because I'd taken my doormat, and I still have the same doormat at home, was I was going to produce this rabbit. My only joke, the reason I'm taking a doormat was I thought working up the street, it'd be funny if people had to wipe their feet when they came up to help me.
Right.
I thought, oh, that's quite nice. So I got people to really wipe their feet before and after when they left. And at the end, everyone came on there to wipe their feet and take their bow. So they all left, and then I looked inside the hat, nothing there. And I picked up the hat and started to walk away, and I picked up the mat and started to walk away, and there, stuck underneath the mat, flat as a pancake, was the rabbit splayed out like that.
That's great.
I mean, he just... And then every show he would critique it. Amazing.
Let's talk about something that might have kind of gone over people's heads, or there's something they might not know about you, which is that you worked on the very early Derren Brown stuff.
Yeah.
Literally when Derren was first found, really. What were you involved with in the early stages of that? I am right. You were right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I was in the second show, I think. It was Andy Nyman, who had worked on the first 1.5, was already getting very busy with his acting and couldn't make it. And strange now when you think about it, I think I was brought in as a sort of performance coach, because Derren hadn't done a lot of stage stuff. Of course, he's a very adept close-up magician, but hadn't done a lot of stage or performing stuff. So I thought that's why I was being brought in. I knew virtually nothing about mind reading or mentalism at all, even though I'd gone along for the audition like everybody else had been trolled in for. And within a day they had some ideas up on the thing, and maybe because I didn't have any idea about what was possible, I said, why don't you try this? And they would go, well, how do you do it? And I said, I don't know how you do it, but wouldn't that be good if? And we worked it out between us, and it was a fantastic collaboration. It was a lot of fun, and I think we came up with some really, really strong material.
You were quite heavily involved in the advertising.
I wrote it, and I thought that was a nice thing to take magic, which I don't think I'd really seen before, take it out of its environment and make it part of the environment.
Sure.
So I thought that was interesting to do, and fair play to Andrew O'Connor. He said, yeah, let's do it, and it was a lot of fun setting it all up to do it. So that idea of using messages that were already in view has been used quite a lot since.
More than a few times.
Yeah.
Not just by Derren either. Pretty much every mentalist ever in the history of mankind. That's pretty. Yeah, Noel mate told me something interesting to talk to you about, which was he says you're much more interested in the plot than the trick.
Yeah.
E.g. that you. So the reason I'm going to mention this is that I heard something amazing over the weekend, which was how some magicians go, oh, that trick's not for me.
Yeah.
Or my character wouldn't do that trick. I'm so sorry, I don't remember who told me this, but what I heard was, well, no, it's not that you wouldn't do that trick, it's what would you do if you did that trick.
Yeah.
In terms of that, if you're a character, you can do anything.
Yes.
It's just the process then of what your character would do in that situation. Yes. Is that fair to say that you're really much more interested in the...
Well, I guess the reason why I loved Cardini so much is the only one... Is he the only one? He's one of very, 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 very few who had that holy trinity of character, situation and conflict. So that actually, if you took Cardini out of that act and then sent him into a cafe, you would know what would happen.
Yes.
Because his character would still... He would be going to butter his... Where's the knife gone? That's weird. So it would follow on, so it wouldn't matter what he picked up. So the issue, I guess, I would say, is that most magicians don't have a clearly defined character, and it takes a long time to work out. Looking at a picture of Alan Allen, that's one of the things he always used to say. He said, who are you, what are you, where are you?
And how does a young magician figure that out?
I think it's very difficult on their own. I think that's where a director can be extremely helpful. Certainly going on workshops outside of magic can be very helpful. You go and study other things that will open your mind up to what you feel comfortable to explore.
There was one other thing Noel mentioned, and as I said, Noel's been an amazing help.
He is an amazing man.
He said that one of the things you get peed off about, and he said you would probably be fun to talk to about, is you hate the YouTube generation of tricks from the sleeves down.
Yeah.
What advice can you give to people putting those sort of videos out, Richard?
Well, again, it's part of a wider social problem, isn't it? It's like Facebook. You want it to be liked, aren't you? Follow me. Then that's the first thing they say on all these videos is, and if you like what I do, follow my YouTube channel. Please like me. So there's a bigger issue at stake. I think the YouTube thing is we've created an army of magicians who are brilliant from the elbows down. You know, I don't think it's any surprise that cardistry came along when it came along. I think it's interesting to see how the progression has been away from... I think it's probably peaked a little bit, but it's people were thinking, I'm not even going to attempt to put any character in this. I'm just going to do something aesthetically pleasing. Nothing wrong with that, and some of it is beautiful to watch. I love watching it, but it's not performance driven. It's pure technique driven. And I think a lot of magicians have gone into that popcorny look at my hands and things moving around, because I don't have to put anything into that. The converse of that, I guess, is people going into buzzy magic, which is my other pet peeve, which I cannot stand.
And you've got a great quote, which is, you don't want to do any magic that you're not responsible for.
That's John Carney.
Oh, is that John Carney?
Yeah.
Great quote.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely is. Yeah, he's absolutely... I don't understand I can't see any pleasure in it at all. I can understand that it makes you bulletproof, in inverted commas, because you go, I can't be caught. But the jeopardy is part of the pleasure of the game. That's what you want. That's what gives it that little frisson.
When it works.
When it works, but you've got to make it so it works. So you've got to do the work to understand what it takes to make it work on whoever you're doing it on.
Sure. Just going back to what you said a few minutes ago about the performer standing on the stage, inviting someone up on stage and just waiting for them. It's fascinating, because I heard Matt King talk about something almost identical, and he said, whenever I get anyone up on stage, I always meet them on the steps, and not at the top of the steps. I meet them 2 or 3 steps down of the 4 to bring them up.
I mean, if someone comes to your house and rings the doorbell and you're standing in the kitchen facing the other way and just say, it's open, come in, and you don't know them, what are you going to feel about that? And then at the end you go, okay, you got to go, all right, bye, and you stay sitting in your armchair, and they have to get up and walk out on their own. You go, what?
Yeah.
Look after people.
So with your background in mime, and particularly movement, on stage, I've got to ask you this: what does it drive you crazy when you watch other magicians who clearly haven't even given that any thought?
I find it very difficult watching magicians. Full stop. I just find the attitude is not great. There are people out there who are doing fantastic work. Jan Frisch, great. He's got a character, he's got a context, and he's got conflict. There you go. Very simple.
Yeah. 3
things, and then you put on stunning technique, which you hide completely, and so the effect you get is, what? There you go. It's not easy. You have to put a ton of thought into it. Go back to the Vernon thing. People stop thinking too soon. You don't think enough. They just think, I've got the trick. Sit in their seat. I always try, and if I'm working with people or on my own stuff, I always think you've got at least 3 points of view. You've got your point of view of doing it. Okay, where am I going to have the things on me that I can get some? All right, so it's in that pocket, so I've got to do that. Then you've got the audience's point of view. If you were sitting in row M, what are they actually looking at? Oh no, actually you'd see you turning around all that. And then the third point of view is if a director walked in the middle of that after 5 minutes, would you think, what on earth is going on here? What are you doing? So much of magic, you go, what are you doing? It's nonsense.
And does that move across into also words as well, patter?
Oh, don't get me started on words. I mean, there's a very good Twitter site. I don't know who it is. Well, I do know who it is, but I'm not
I know who it is, and I know exactly what you're going to say.
Which is Magic Transcribed, which I think actually, whilst people have had a good laugh watching it, is an amazingly useful tool. And every single one of us, we're all guilty. You could film any one of us, and if we transcribed it, you go, jeepers, really?
So it's a Twitter account, is it at Magic Transcribed?
Yeah, I think
If you've not seen this, look it up on Twitter, and it's basically a magician is transcribing other magicians' videos, e.g. the wording that they say, and when you read it, you realise what...
It's astonishing.
Just what nonsense it is.
Palpable nonsense on every level. Illogical, rude, quite often, no clarity, and repetitious, full of ums, ahs, know what I means, okays, basically, is all the little filler words that drive people up the wall in real life. You know, people now want carefully considered, crafted. That's what they want to see. They want craft. An audience, they know when they're seeing it crafted. So it's no surprise that storytelling is such a massive thing here and in the States at the moment. And they're packed. I went to one called The Moth, which is brilliant. They're online, they're really top quality. It was like a rock concert, and it's just people coming on telling stories. But they had crafted every single word. In fact, the best one I saw, the whole 12 minutes landed on one syllable, and it was brilliant. It was like, wow, you know they've put the work in.
And when you look at other parts of entertainment, like circus and things, and you see how they've all moved on over the last 20 years, and I don't think it's unfair to say that most of them, there are exceptions, but most magicians are still doing the same old tired stories.
We're so far behind.
Why is that, Richard? Why are we not moving?
We're working in isolation, whereas they're not. They're working. You go to the circus school in London, they're working, you know, you can go in any day of the week, and there's loads of people in there. They're not hiding it, they're working on it. So they're working in isolation out of, well, there's three reasons. There's arrogance, ignorance and fear. And they're all connected. But those are the three reasons. Either you think, no, I'm fine, I'm really good. No, you're not. Ignorance, you don't know that you're not very good. Or fear, I don't want to have to think about those elements because that is more vulnerable to me. Really, the more vulnerable you are on stage, the more powerful you are. That's why, you know, in a theatre, you're on a stage. You're raised up so we can see all of you. There's no hiding. Why is centre stage the most powerful place to stand? It's because you're most vulnerable. You've got to run a long way to get off if you're front and centre, but that's the place people go, wow, who's that? You don't stand up at the back where you're kind of hiding. People want to see you. They build theatres so you can hear everything. So there's no point trying to hide your personality. That's not what people want. Going back to that little boy who was laughing, you went, here I am. In fact, the exercise full circle with Philippe Gaulier, the second day, you had to come out from behind a screen and just shout, it's me. Because that's all an audience wants to see.
I can't imagine listening to you talk with such passion and the depth of your thinking. I can't imagine you enjoying a close-up gig somehow.
I'm very fortunate. I work in a couple of really lovely places. I work at Wembley Stadium, which has been through James Friedman, and I love working there. The table size, tables are 4 for one thing, or even 2 sometimes. So you're actually with people, which takes me back. Don't forget I worked for 3 years at the Magic Moment in London.
We should talk about that.
So that was like a laboratory for me.
So this was like a magic restaurant.
Yeah, it's where the Apple Store is.
In the centre of London.
Yeah,
what is now the Apple Store?
Yeah, in Regent Street, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a huge success because there hadn't been... Faye was doing close-up at the time. I think Simon Drake was doing close-up at the time. But there wasn't a bespoke place where you would go to see magic. And it was 12, 14 hours a day, non-stop sometimes. Non-stop. From lunch you go right through to the evening shift.
That sounds bloody awful.
I loved it.
Did you?
I would go home and practice afterwards. Really. I loved it because that's where I developed sort of my thoughts on misdirection and stuff, and it was like a laboratory. You'd shift something an inch to the right or to the left and go, oh, that's interesting, it's less light on that area. So I was over and over. It was great.
Who was behind that place?
Americans. They had it in Florida, and it had done well over there. They brought it over here. A lot of magicians started, and then it was whittled down to just a few who were all good, very good. Chris Power worked there as a fantastic magician. Kay Crystal, JJ, Trevor Lewis. No, Trevor Liley. That's dreadful. Sorry, Trevor Liley. And Don Robertson.
I've got to ask. I ask tough questions on this podcast.
Yeah.
What was the money like?
In those days, it was good.
Was it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. We were paid by the shift. I think we did... it was sort of 4 or 5 days a week. Plus you'd get tips at the time. And at Christmas... we were... there were only 8 or 10 full-time close-up magicians in London. Now I could ask, if you wanted 100, we could make some phone calls and get them for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But there were 6 or 8, and people were coming to watch it. They weren't going somewhere and you're what, sorry? Oh yeah, a magician. Oh right, okay. They were coming to watch the magic. So it was fantastic learning curve.
Do you still love it, Richard, magic? I do find it fascinating sometimes when we talk to magicians like yourself who have been in it your whole life. We've started, right at the beginning with you walking into the magic shop as a kid, and then how can you when so much of it is shit? I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
When so much of it is shit, how do
Let's
you
say 98% of it?
How do you stay in love with it? Is it really tough?
I think the subject is still wonderful, and the subject is still incredibly relevant today. I think the magic that we're doing is irrelevant, and that's the trick, is to make it feel relevant and make people care. I know we talk about that a lot, but seeing someone stand up and do tricks, I find it very, very difficult to watch, and that's just, maybe I've seen too much, maybe, but then you get that shard of light. You see David from the 1,500 people belly laughing, doing the best miser's dream. He's only got 4 coins, best miser's dream you could wish for, and some of his other routines. Or you see Jan Frisch, or you see Yu Ho Jin, and you go, that's what it is. So I love, I can open a Tommy Wonder book and go, what a great phrase. I mean, those are the best books for me.
The Book of Wonder.
The tremendous, just the preface, the dedication, dedicated to those who put the love of magic above comfort and reward.
Wow, what a great quote.
Not many people who do that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
So, and now I like to see how you can use magic in life. What lessons can you take from magic and apply them elsewhere? And that I'm fascinated with.
We've touched on it a little bit already, and I wanted to sort of finish with you talking about this, and that's the breathe thing, which has come along in the last
10 years.
How did it first come about? And I just wonder if you can tell us a little bit about some of the rewarding things you've seen, because you talk about magic meaning something, or actually having a bloody purpose. Well, this is a purpose.
Yes, it really is. Yeah, obviously there was Project Magic in America,
which Copperfield was behind.
Yes. And David Owen, who we mentioned earlier on, who's a QC, barrister, brilliant mediator, and a really good magician. He's one of the few I could sit and watch every time. He's a great storyteller, good magician, but wow, what a great storyteller. He wanted to do something where magic was more than mere entertainment. So he knocked on a lot of doors at a lot of hospitals. Many of them said, I don't know what you're talking about, no thank you. Finally landed at the Evelina Hospital, St Thomas's in London, which is a children's hospital, and the occupational therapist there said, actually, that sounds good, let's meet. So he very kindly took me along to the first meeting. We met a clinical lead there and an occupational therapist there, and we said, what is it they need to do? What's the patient group? And these are young people with a condition called hemiplegia. 1 in 1,300 have it, so it's the same as Down syndrome. It's quite high. It's basically an injury to the brain, either before birth, during birth, or after birth. It's most close, I guess, would be an adult who's had a stroke. So one half of their body, hemiplegia, paralysed or severely weakened. So if you think, how do I hold a knife and fork? How do I cut my food? I've only got the effective use of one hand. How do I get dressed? How do I do anything with one? Hands, goodness me, we're magicians. We're using our hands so we can do all these amazing things. But if you can't hold a plate or lift a cup off a saucer or whatever it is, do your tile, just do your buttons up, that's really challenging. So 40% of them go on to have psychosocial problems in their teens. They can have low self-esteem, obviously, low confidence. And so we said to them, okay, what is it you need them to be able to do? Well, their normal occupational therapy is pick up this glass, put it down, pick it up, put it down, just repetitive. Well, asking a 9-year-old to do that, and you're only meeting them once every 5 or 6 weeks, they're not going to do it. So, okay, let's give them something that they want to learn. So we teach them magic. But the key is that every magic trick is worked in incredibly close collaboration with the occupational therapist. So they tell us the movement they want to be able to do. They need to be able to use a pinching finger with a finger and thumb. You need that for your buttons. Okay, so what needs a pinching finger on? What about this trick? Or they need to be able to turn their hand over from palm to... need to be able to hold their hands flat on a table, because you need to be able to do that to write. I was working with a boy on Saturday, and we said, it was their last day of the clubs, and we said, what have you noticed different? He said, my handwriting. He said, because now I can hold my book down with one hand and I can write. Can you imagine trying to write on a piece of paper? You can't hold the paper down, it's moving. It's just, how frustrating. Of course, at lunchtime, if they can't hold the school tray, they're the last ones to get their food. They're the last ones. They've got to wait for someone to take the food over to the table. They can't cut their food, so now they've got to wait for that. Well, their friends have all gone. So you imagine how difficult that becomes. How it's not one challenge, it's 100 challenges a day. So they come to us for 10 days. We teach them these magic tricks that have got embedded within them all the movements that they need to be practicing. They know it. They know they're doing therapy, but they are so desperate to learn the magic because they've seen us do a little show at the beginning, and the magicians we have are really outstanding. You've got Will Houston, you've got Christopher Howell, James Freeman, Ed Hilson, Laura London, John M. Armstrong, and David Owen. So you've got good, and myself, they've got really good people. They want to learn these tricks. They come to a camp. They've never met other children with this condition before. The parents have never met other children or other families, so there's all that social bonding going on. But while they're learning it, sitting behind their desks, there is an occupational therapist behind each child, so it's one-to-one. So they've got a person sitting behind them who's helping them open their hands, stretch out the fingers, and then we're teaching the tricks from up front. And we mix the magic up. We have some that are simple, in inverted commas, doesn't mean they're easy, but it might be the coin slide. Well, that's easy, just turn the thing around, don't you? Well, if you can't pick up a coin from the table, that's not easy. But they want to learn it so much that they will practice it. And then we teach them more difficult things, like we teach them the cups and balls, which they get terrific at. But you think turning a cup over is very difficult with their, what we call their helper hand, their weaker hand. And the 1 to 10 of the sponge balls. And some of them get, they get better than the people I've seen doing it here. They want to learn it so much that not only do they practice every day, they'll go home and we'll say, just do 10 minutes at home. They'll do 2 hours because they want to learn it. And the payoff is that they do a show at the end. They're also practicing their daily living activities, the buttons and things. And the great thing is that magic is all about doing the impossible. So we show them a magic trick. They go, that's impossible. It's impossible. How does that work? Then we show them, not only is it possible, but we show them how to do it. Well, now that thing that seemed impossible becomes possible. So now we take them back to their shoelace, holding the knife and fork. Oh, that's impossible. Is it? Well, let's have a look at it another way. We've given you these tools, learn how to do it, and within 10 days, they're all cutting their food. They can do buttons up. We had a child of 8 whose hand had been in a fist all his life. Within 10 days, his hand is open. That's creating new neural pathways to make yourself do that. He's made himself open a hand that's been paralysed for his entire life. And I said to him, what did you think? And he said, well, I wonder what was inside. Amazing,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it is mind-blowing. And then you see, God, the enthusiasm they have for learning magic. That's what, you go, that's what magic is. Magic's this amazing, amazing, wonderful thing that stimulates the mind, that creates connections with people, that creates these incredible connections between mind and body. To do things with your hands, we take it for granted. Most people in civilian life, they don't do things with their hands. They might play an instrument, so that's great. They might garden a bit, but they're not working their hands. And to have that connection between the mind and the hands is a wonderful sense of being of yourself. So the results are astonishing, truly astonishing, heartwarming, and it's a privilege to be with those magicians and with the occupational therapists, but most of all it's a privilege to be with the children. So if people want to look it up online, it's Breathe Magic.
So I say, can there be, my listeners here, they might want to help or make a donation?
That would be amazing. There are facilities to make a donation online. We're always looking for people who are interested. It's hard work, no doubt about it. Most important of all, is you've got to park your ego at the door, because it's not well done you. It's just focusing out. Your intent is 100% on the children, is giving them that thing so that they can go up on stage and go, they can be, as one child said, I can be looked at for something I can do rather than being looked at for something I can't. So it's that's a very rewarding way of using magic. But I think magic can be used in all sorts of ways. I work with businessmen using magic to help them present and communicate. There's all sorts of magic's not just ta-da, but ta-da is very nice if it's done with the right spirit.
Rich, this has been amazing. Absolutely amazing. I wish we'd done this years ago, and I hope we get to do it again one day as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been great. Thank you so much. What an amazing magician, and more importantly, what an amazing human being. That was Richard McDougall. Thank you so much for meeting me, Richard. It was a great pleasure to talk to you. As he mentioned, Breathe Magic has a webpage which you'll find very easily just by simply Googling Breathe Magic. Have a look at it and see if you can help out in some way. That's it for this week. I sincerely hope you enjoyed it. I will of course be back again next Friday with another brand new episode of the Magicians Podcast. I'll see you then. Have a great week. Take care. Bye bye.